Good evening. We are just going to give it a few minutes till more attendees join, and then we can start. All right, Doctor, we have 220 attendees already. Do you want me to give it a couple more minutes, or shall we start?
Let's go ahead and start.
All right. Okay. So good evening again, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you all with us today in the fifth and last module of the use of technology in hybrid education professional development certificate. Artificial intelligence in education will be our today's model presented by Professor Mohammed Ghazal. Before we start the module, let me remind you of the guidelines. To access the recorded sessions and get your certificate of completion or certificate of attendance, you need to register in the ADU community portal. Participants who submit the final reflection will receive a certificate of completion. Participants who choose not to submit the final reflection will receive a certificate of attendance. For those choosing to submit the reflection, the deadline will be on November 4, 2021 by 11:59 p.m. Abu Dhabi UAE timing. To have access to translation during the sessions, please download the Microsoft Translate. IT department will provide you with the code in the chat box. During the sessions, you can write your comments in the chat box. You can use the Q&A option in Zoom to ask any questions related to the topic, and the presenter will answer your questions accordingly. You can also use the raise hand button in Zoom in case you want to speak. Professor Mohammed Ghazal obtained his Master of Sciences and PhD degrees in Electrical and Computer Engineering from Concordia University, Canada in 2006 and 2010. He was awarded Alexander Graham Bell Fellowship by Natural Sciences and Engineering Research Council and the Quebec Research Fund for Nature and Technology by the Government of Quebec. He obtained his Bachelor of Sciences in Computer Engineering from the American University of Sharjah, where he was awarded the President's Cup and the Ministry of Education Shield for creative thinking. Professor Ghazal is currently a professor and chair of the Electrical, Computer and Biomedical Engineering Department at Abu Dhabi University. He has received multiple awards, including $1 million from the UAE Prime Minister's Office for an innovative mobile app during the 2015 Government Summit, the Distinguished Faculty Award of Abu Dhabi University in 2014 and 2016, and Abu Dhabi University Research Fellow in 2018. He was inducted to the American University of Sharjah Hall of Fame in 2018 by Sheikh Sultan Al Qasimi. He has authored over 200 publications in technical journals and international conferences, including scientific reports, Elsevier's Renewable and Sustainable Energy Reviews, IEEE, or Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers Transactions on Biomedical Engineering, IEEE Transactions on Image Processing, on circuits and systems for video technology, and on consumer electronics. His current research interests are artificial intelligence in bioimaging, genomics, and smart systems. He is a senior member of IEEE and a member of the ACM, Association for Computing Machinery, and Biomedical and Engineering Society, and an accreditation board for engineering and technology program evaluator for the Engineering Accreditation Commission. Professor Ghazal, the mic is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. And thank you for inviting me to this excellent workshop. My name is Mohammed Ghazal, and today I want to talk to you about artificial intelligence in education. This is a topic which is dear to me. It combines two of my passions, which are artificial intelligence and being an educator. And I would like, before beginning, to acknowledge the help and the team who has really made all of this possible, including Engineer Maha, whose help is instrumental in making this a success. Let me introduce you to our team. What will be presented today is the effort of many years of the work of great people. These are teams that are both in the United Arab Emirates, in Abu Dhabi University, as well as in the University of Louisville in the United States, with collaborations from many universities around the world to build these systems and to test them and to make them a reality. We are, as researchers, working in the area of medicine, applying artificial intelligence in medicine, industrial monitoring, education, and environmental assessment. So the outline of my presentation today is we're going to discuss what is artificial intelligence. This is a fluid term, an abstract one that you will find many definitions of. So we'll agree together on one particular way of looking at AI. And then we're going to have a look at how AI is influencing practice everywhere, before looking at the many use cases that I have come across, either through our research, the research of my colleagues, or by observing how AI has shaped education and technology, reaching up to this point in emerging services and tools that have just become mainstream. And I would like to, every time, introduce one of these topics to you, to give you access to where you can find more about this particular topic or tool and how you can use it within your own schools and bring AI to transform education and be part of that movement. We're going to discuss many use cases for AI and how AI can be used in education. And then we're going to make some concluding remarks at the end. Just a few quotes about AI and machine learning that have been in existence for some time now. These quotes are by major influencers for technology. But what is remarkable about these talks, about these quotes, is that they happened long time ago, many, many years back, and they were prediction at the time. And we are now living the reality of those predictions. Bill Gates, the chairman of Microsoft, said that a breakthrough in machine learning would be worth 10 Microsoft at a time when Microsoft was the company, the world's largest company, not only in technology, but probably in all fields. And to him, at that time, a breakthrough in machine learning was worth 10 Microsofts. And it is the case. It has materialized. The market for AI now is introducing innovations that are scaling up its value in almost all sectors, education included. Another quote, which is saying machine learning is the next internet. And this is at a time where internet was not what it is today. Internet now is more. Internet now is something that people take for granted. It's something that our kids grow up with, something that if cut, we notice, something that has become a right at some point. And machine learning and AI is projected to be the next internet. So in the same way that internet has reached our families, in the same way that people who we know around us who have absolutely no technology backgrounds are now experts in the internet and its ins and outs and how to use it, we are expecting that AI will have the same effect. And this is materializing now. There are many examples of such predictions that we are currently living. And this breakthrough that they talk about in AI has happened. And it is why you see the penetration of AI all over the place, education included. And some of the use cases that you'll see today are things that were unthinkable, if not because of this breakthrough that has happened in machine learning with the introduction of deep learning and the implications of deep learning on a lot of aspects of AI. But before we look at how AI has influenced education, let us start to maybe come up with a definition for AI. So in its most simplest form, AI is basically trying to mimic human behavior. Whenever you find yourself with a certain skill, with a certain experience, with a certain knowledge that you utilize on daily basis to do repetitive tasks, a question becomes, what if AI can do that? So, and these skills can be anything. For example, for a surgeon, these skills would be the use of their hands in order to do operations. For a teacher, it could be the skill of reading student faces and then being able to adjust or adapt their teaching accordingly. For somebody who works in industry, it could be the skill of spotting if there is a problem and there is a need for maintenance. For somebody who's a farmer, it could be the skill of identifying from a tree leaf whether there is a disease or a need to apply certain measures to remedy the situations. Any skill, any behavior, a behavior as far as, for example, driving is a skill, is a behavior. And AI basically is coming up with mathematical models and programming those models in order to be able to replicate this behavior. We want AI to be able to perform these tasks that humans do, especially ones that are repetitive, that are error prone. These are most ideal for AI. And one thing that people wonder whenever the discussion on AI starts to present itself is that if AI is there to replace us. And the answer is no, that's not the case. In fact, we are happy to be in a profession that is a human profession, one where there is a lot of emotion that cannot be replicated by AI. When we inspire students, when we encourage them, when we motivate them, these aspects of our job will never be automated, will never be replaced by AI. But there are aspects of our job where we can benefit from AI, aspects that are repetitive. We all at some point have been loaded with grading, for example, and have wondered if this is something that we can maybe automate. We have all been burdened by proctoring and wondered if there is something that we can do to automate this. And that's what we want. We want AI to augment our ability, to make us do a better job in the way we're doing. We have that experience of saying, this student needs help. Where does that come from? It comes from our input. It comes from knowing the students, looking at their work, knowing their strengths and their weaknesses, coming up with a plan to help them. All of this is something that we do for one particular student. But can we do it for all? Can we scale our attention so that it can reach all 30, 40 students in our classroom? We cannot. But what if AI can give us the information that we need in order to do that? What if AI can help us predict when students need help and when they are okay, and scale our attention so that it can span hundreds of students without us putting that much of a burden on us to analyze and to pursue and to investigate and then to come up with plans. So AI can augment our ability, can make us able to retrieve. Imagine, for example, trying to coming up with an example in the middle of a classroom, something that we've all done. But what if AI can give you 10 examples? What if it can generate for you material instead of you having to work on it? Instead of you having to come up with certain sources and to synthesize those sources and to create a presentation, what if you just need to be the architect of this all and then let AI do the work? So AI is not there to replace us. AI is there to upgrade our abilities, so that we can do now things that we could not have done in the past. And let's see these things. So everywhere we spot repetition in the work that we do, or everywhere in education where we spot limitations in resources, we can start to think, what if AI can help? It can help in many ways. It can help in scaling our ability so we can, target larger numbers, and it can help refocus our attention so that we can invest our time in the human connection side of things, as opposed to the repetitive but necessary tasks, which AI can take care of. So that is what has driven our research. We have stopped and we have thought about what can certain aspects of education use a better solution for. And let's explore this together. But before we do, we need to understand that it's not only education that is benefiting from AI. In practice, AI is everywhere. Wherever there is data, wherever there is human behavior, follows AI. The AI which drives cars autonomously now is an example of that. The AI that looks at where you are and starts to recommend what discounts you may like or what offers might intrigue you. It's there. AI that would welcome you in an airport or in a hotel and lead you to where you need to go. It's there. AI that generates music that is adaptive to what you like. AI that generates art to your liking or copies the style of your favorite artists to something that you want to draw or something that you want to produce. AI that will design your space, will automate it and make it available for you and change it so that it matches your liking. AI that will precisely monitor our agriculture and the environment and give you data. AI that will manage millions of e-commerce transactions and deliveries and still do a good job in there, and AI in education. So AI is everywhere, and it will continue to influence the way we live and create better realities as we go on. And some of these realities are in education. So now let's go and explore together what are some of the applications of artificial intelligence in education and how we can apply them in our own schools. First of all, let's look at grade prediction. What is grade prediction? Now, I'm going to have a style in looking at each and every one of these use cases. And it goes this way. I will introduce the use case, tell you that this is what we are trying to do. So give you a bit of a system overview of how things work there. Give you a little bit of a peek under the hood. Go slightly technical in terms of how the system works, so you can get an insight as to what drives this AI and how it can be improved in the future. And then, we'll summarize the benefits that this particular use case brings to education. And at the same time, we'll look at if there are any links or tools that I want to share with you so that you can benefit from this in your own school. So that will be the style of going over all of these different applications. And let's begin with grade prediction. So AI can be used in grade prediction. How's that? Well, this is the idea. Suppose that we have here our data. So we have student ID. We have student ID. We have assignment 1. We have quiz 1. We have midterm. And what we want to do is to be able to predict the final grade that a student takes in this course. Predicted how? Predicted only based on assignment 1. I want a very early warning in education. Based on your grade in assignment 1, I want to give you very early warning that your final grade in the course is likely going to be in this range. Maybe I'll improve it. So I don't factor in only assignment 1 as data. I look at assignment 1 and look at quiz 1. And based on these two, I will do a better job at predicting what your future grade will be. Notice that I'm not now reacting to a student's grade after they have finished the course. I'm reacting to a student's grade and need for help very, very earlier on in the course, when it's still time for intervention, when it's still time to react. I now have, with the assignment 1 and the quiz 1, and now the midterm is there with its grades. So I can now take all 3 of them and use AI to look into the future and to try to predict what the final grade is going to be. And the way this works introduces us to one very important concept about AI, which is learning from data. So how will AI be able to look at assignment 1, quiz 1, and midterm 1, and then try to predict for me what the students will get at the very end, so I can intervene early and warn the students, or maybe put a plan for them so that they can, catch up on the areas that they are requiring help in? It's about data. So the way this works is that I collect past data in the course. I have the data. Maybe not for the students that I currently have, but I have it for students that have taken this course with me before. I have all of their grades. I have their assignment 1, I have their quiz 1, I have their midterm, I have their final exam, and I have their final grade. I have everything. Not only do I have it sitting in somewhere in my laptop for only these students, I actually happen to have it for many, many years when I taught this course, sitting there waiting to be exploited, with hidden patterns and relationships between things that can reveal what's going on. There is a relationship between the grade in quiz 1 and the final grade. Quiz 1 reveals something to me about the student's readiness to get an A or a B or a 90 or a 70 in this particular subject. The midterm tells me something, and I want AI to help me understand that kind of relationship. So what I do is I simply use the data that I originally had, and I train the AI with it. I call it training set. So I come and I feed the AI this training set, and the AI starts to learn. And as the AI starts to learn, and after having fed this data to AI, I produce a model. And that model then can be used to predict the final grades for students. And this model uses only one variable, simple equation. It tells you, if you would like to know a student's final grade in the course, simply multiply 15 by 0.5 with the assignment grade, subtract 3.8, and that gives you an indicator as to what the final grade is going to be. Very simple model that relies only on assignment 1. But what if I can do better? What if I can do assignment 1 and quiz 1? The students have now just finished assignment 1 and finished quiz 1. I have now 2 indicators that can help my AI. You can probably guess what is it that we are doing. If I now present you, listen, if I give you the score of students, if I tell you a student got 3 in assignment 1 and in your quiz they got 2.5, what would you predict their final grade to be? You probably can come up with a number, and that number, depending on your experience, can be very close. And that is the experience that we want AI to be able to replicate here. So now we train AI with the data that we had in the past, the students who took assignment 1 and took quiz 1 in the past, and we have their final scores because they graduated, they've taken the course. We already know how well they have done. Then I give this data to AI, and AI processes the numbers and comes up with a model for me. Tells me, if you wish to predict a future which has not yet happened, if you would like to know what is the grade of their student at the end of the course, then take their assignment 1 grade, multiplied by 11.8, add to it 7 times quiz 1, and subtract 16, and that will give you your now new prediction, updated prediction of the student grades. So notice how AI starts to learn more as more data becomes available. And that's another theme of AI. So far, we have seen 2 themes of AI. One theme is learning from data. If I have data, AI can help me do great things with this data. The other thing is it learns as data becomes more available. So now that I have finished assignment 1 and quiz 1, I'm in a position to improve my prediction. I can improve my prediction more once the midterm kicks in. And I can start to, again, use the grades that I have for assignment 1 and quiz 1 and midterm for past students in the course to train a new AI that will come up with a formula for me that says, crunch the numbers this way, take the assignment 1 multiplied by 1.1, then take quiz 1 and multiplied by 4, and then take midterm and multiply it by 7 and subtract 33, and you can come to a simple realization as to what is the grade prediction for this student. So I can monitor my students better. And this AI is not really far from you. This AI is super easy and available. So let us understand how this works first. In the world of AI, learning to predict numbers like this is called regression. And this is a concept which is well established in statistics. Some of you might even have recognized this as this is regression from statistics. And that is precisely the case. When I give AI the ability to look at data and then to use this data to predict a number, this is something called supervised learning. Why supervised? Because like you do, if for example, you give your students problems, which end up with them producing a number, then this is a form of regression. And if you were to give the students a set of problems, and then you give them the answers for those problems, and you ask them to learn from those examples, then this is precisely what happens here. We give AI problems. The problems is predict the grades for the students for me using their past performance. And we give them the answers. Here is their final grade because they have done so. It's in the past. These are students who graduated. So I have their data. And now, in exactly the same way, where you have given students a bunch of problems with their answers, thus supervised their learning, we call this aspect of AI supervised learning. And because we are producing a number, we call it regression. And the benefit that this allows me to do is it allows me to predict well the students who are going to perform in the class and those who need help and intervene as early as quiz 1. Then, based on my intervention in quiz 1, maybe this has changed the performance in assignment 1, which has led me to change my prediction. And now I know the students who was struggling and who was going towards maybe a poor grade has now picked up the base, improved themselves, and is heading to a better grade thanks to my intervention. And then after I intervene, after assignment 1, I can then check what happened in the midterm and improve my prediction as I go on. And the other thing that this will help me do is that it will help me create insights from my data. If there is a particular assessment which has not helped me in the prediction, it's not correlating well with the student's performance, maybe I need to think about it. Maybe it needs adjustment so that it can correlate better to the performance. Now, as promised, there is a tool that can help you do that, which you can find in this link here. Simple tool where you can upload your grades and come up to produce a prediction model for the student's performance based on what they have taken in the past. But in reality, you don't need that tool. In reality, you can do that in simple steps using Excel. So suppose this is what you have. I have students and I have their assessments and I have their final grades. And this is from the past, but I would like to learn from the past so that I can use it in the future. So what you do is you go and you click on the data tab here. And from the data tab, you click on data analysis. Once you click on data analysis, you will find that you have a number of options. Go for regression. That's the name we gave to the idea of being able to predict a number using inputs, similar to what we have in here. Click on OK. And after that, select what is it that you are predicting. Well, in my case, our Y is the final grade. So we're going to come to this field and choose the column that responds to the final grade. In our case, this column is I2 to I22. So from here all the way to here. So I selected this column. Next, I want to know what my input is. What are the things that I would like to use to predict the final grade? This is AI at your fingertips, AI readily available to use right away. And then when I come to select the range, I will decide, for example, here that I want to use the range from C all the way to D. So in here, I'm using assignment 1 and I'm using quiz 1. So these two will be used as a way to predict the final grade. So column C and D are my input and column I is my output. That's what I did. That's what I identified in the GUI. Now, they do have labels. For example, assignment 1 and quiz 1, there are labels. So I'm going to tick this box to say there are labels, ignore them. And then one last step remains, which is to identify where would you like the output to go. So now I'm going to select the output range and then decide where do I want the output to go. I want the output to go below the data here in B24. And then voila, as soon as I just click on OK, I'm going to end up with the results. And in the results, it tells me now this is the formula that you need. This is the number that you multiply quiz 1 with. This is the number you multiply assignment 1 with, and you subtract that amount, and you should be able to come to predict what your final grade will be. And in fact, it tells you how good is that relationship with the final grade by looking at this column here. So now from these numbers, I can come to deduce what? I can come to deduce that these are the model parameters, and then I can use those model parameters in a new formula and then program this formula to give me the predicted grade. And this is simply take the value of quiz 1 column multiplied by the quiz 1 attribute, take the value of the assignment 1 column and multiply it by the assignment attribute, add to it the intercept. And once I do that, I have now grade predictions. The AI is able to look at these and then come up with, now these, it doesn't mean that they are perfect. It doesn't mean that they are poor also. So they perform at a certain level. Of course, the more data you have, the better this performance is. So there is always a trade-off. This data itself is not perfect. So the results we cannot expect to be 100%, but it should give us a good indication. And we can use that, now that I have assignment 3, we can repeat the process. And now that we have more data, are able to predict better. And I still have assignment 4 and final exam. I can still do something with that student so that they can do better at those assessments and improve their final grades. So this is one aspect of how AI can be used in grade prediction, one that is readily available for you just on Excel or on that web tool that I have shown you. Now, I do have a couple of questions in relation to this one. So in the interest of keeping this dynamic, I will maybe answer this question, which is, would the grade predictor model apply more to older students who receive actual grades, or can it be used for students as young as KG? Actually, for that, it doesn't matter. As long as you have good data and good numbers, then it should be able to predict well what the performance is. So and again, if there are certain predictors which are not giving you good performance, then you can remove them. For example, let me go back a little bit and we can look at the data. Say, for example, assignment 1 happens to be easy. Most of the students are doing 544. Maybe it's not a good indicator to use in my model. In fact, regression will tell me that, will tell me how good my model is in explaining my data. So if the value here is too high, maybe it's not a good idea to use this particular predictor. But in this case, for example, for the quiz 1 is an excellent predictor for this data. So maybe I in my next model, I will look at quiz 1. So it really boils down to how good is your data. And the good thing about AI is that it will give you insight as to what part of your data is good in creating this model. Now, AI can also be used for automated participation assessment. We all want our students to participate. We all want them to be engaged in the classroom, but we know that some of them are maybe shy. Some of them do not participate as much as we need them to. What if you can get a report on how each student have participated inside the classroom using AI? AI will monitor what they say. Of course, we do. And maybe after the class, we go and we assign grades for the students who are maybe participating more, or at least assess their participation level. What if this can be automated? And now it can be automated. Now, how the system works is we have microphones placed around the room. And if you're asking, where can I get microphones placed around the room? Well, if the students have computers, if they have mobile phones, then all of these participating devices can be used to record the audio from around the room. And then we upload it into a server where AI does what is called speaker identification. What it does is basically listens to the audio. It's trained to know if I am talking or if anybody else is talking. Another AI is trained to know if Ahmed is talking and anybody else is talking. So we have an AI trained to recognize a person's voice and then identify their identity. So basically, I can then look and analyze the audio and say, Ahmed spoke here, Muhammad spoke here, Amna spoke here, and so on. And then based on that, come up with statistics. How often do they speak? Which portion of the class do they occupy? And so on and so forth. So the benefit of that is that the teacher would get a detailed and accurate report, accurate account of who are the students who participate the most inside the classroom and who are the ones who we need to encourage. Not only the teacher, this can be something that goes all the way to the parent, and they can get a report dedicated to how much does their kid participate in each and every one of the topics. Maybe they can get an insight as to what topics they like the most, what topics they need maybe to be encouraged to participate in more, and so on. Now, at the time of introducing this was part of our research that we published in 2017. However, now this is actually available in Teams. Teams will give you a detailed account of who said what at what time. And then you can use that report in a recorded, for example, meeting or a classroom, and then use that to assess participation in the same way. So just to show you a demo of how this works. So you imagine here that we have this application is the one in 2017. And the way the application works is, students log in, and after they log in, they participate in a meeting, in a class, by clicking on participate. When they finish participating, then they record the session. And after they record the session, this is uploaded. So I have, for example, here 2 recordings from 2 different students engaged in a classroom discussion. So the left is from the first student, the second is from the second student, the right is from the second student. And then, they all are recording the same thing. It goes to our server, and the server starts to process this audio, identify the students, and eventually produces something which is similar to this. I have 2 students. They participated equally in the conversation. And now I can use this in order to track their participation in this. And now this is something that is available in almost all Stream-like recordings, for example. So if I have YouTube can do something similar to that, as it annotates meetings. Teams does something similar to that. So this is now a widely available tool, which is used to get meeting minutes. Now, AI can also be used for author attribution. This is a problem we are all facing more now than ever. You get students now who get ads, advertisements about people who will do the projects for them. They can buy a project. They can buy a lab experiment report. They pass on the requirements, your requirements, to somebody else, where they do it for them, and then they send it back. And it's very difficult for you to come to assess whether this is something that was done by the student themselves, or did they receive help from somebody else. But AI can. The way this works is simple. I can bring the work of student number 1, give it to an AI, and train the AI to recognize, is this Ahmed's work or not Ahmed's work? I can then train another AI, is this Amina's work or not Amina's work? How? I can collect samples of Amina's work in the past that she has done in front of me. I can collect samples of everybody else's work, everybody who's not Amina, and then give it to AI. And AI now starts to profile Amina's writing ability, starts to be able to recognize her language, her style, her grammar use, her mistakes. And I do that for all of the students that I have in my class. A tool does that for me, our tool. Eventually, what I get is an AI trained to recognize if this is the work of a student or not. I can then present that AI with a new piece of work and it will tell me, is this likely something that Ahmed has developed or not? And I know this is a skill we possess. I know all of us as a teacher have at some point read something and said, this could not have been that person's work. We know their level, we know how they write, we know their style, and so on. And that is precisely the skill that this research is trying to capture. Now, you're all familiar with tools which are existing also to do something similar, but not to check whether this is Ahmed's work or maybe the work of somebody else who's not Ahmed, but rather to check Ahmed's work against the body of work which is available and uploaded to the internet on an archive. Such tool deploy AI to make this happen, like Turnitin and SafeAssign. These are some of the tools that are there for what we call plagiarism detection, when students present work as if done by them when it's not. But this looks at a body of work which is available compared to, for example, author attribution, where AI is used not to be tested against a body of work that have existed on the internet, but rather a body of work that has been collected in the past from that students. AI can also be used for automated problem solving. So I can actually make AI understand problems, and by pointing my phone to a problem, it will work out the solution and give the feedback to the student. So if a student is stuck and do not know how to solve a particular problem, AI can kick in and help them get the answers to this problem. Step by step, give the full answers and so on. How does this work? This is actually a more complicated AI version, where, say, for example, this is what I have. I have students in the classroom and they draw a problem, for example, from science, let's say a circuit. And they work out the answers, but they want to know whether their answers are correct or not. Or they want to find out, they don't know how to solve this, and they want to find out what their answers are. So they point their phone, they take a picture or a video preview of the problem. AI comes, it recognizes these elements in the problem. It recognizes the values. It knows the relationship between the inputs and the outputs, does the math, produces the values, and then puts those back on the phone so that the students can see the answer. Now, the benefit here is giving students feedback at the right time. I want you to imagine, for example, any problem. Say they need to differentiate or they need to integrate and so on. If I understand the element of a problem by pointing to it, and I can get AI to figure out the integration symbol, to figure out the integration variable, to figure out the limits, for example, I can get AI to do the work and get the answers. The same thing applies also for KG. Say that you are teaching KG, and I want AI, if I point to a particular object, to speak out its name, to speak out its color. This is similar to what we are talking about here. AI will figure out what is the problem that is presented to it, what is the letter that I'm currently looking at, or how to pronounce this particular word, and then can provide an automated feedback given to the kid or the student as to what is that particular object. And through that kind of interaction, by interacting with problems, learn. So of course, the benefit of something like that is to be able to get immediate feedback on problems or on objects around them in a fun and interesting way that does not involve looking at, somebody else to give them the answer, but rather involves them invoking the answers by interacting with the environment around them. So for more information, this is a recent paper that describes this particular technique and how it can be applied also to all sorts of other problems as well. So here, this is pretty much how it looks like. I'm presenting the kid with a number of hand-drawn circuits in science. It could be also a mathematical problem. It could be also something as simple as objects or people doing something on a picture, and I want them to identify what is it that they are observing. It can be any number of things. And then AI would analyze the different elements of the problems and come to superimpose the solutions, even localizing where these solutions go. For example, in here, every segment of this particular diagram involves some elements of the solution. So AI will put these answers in the right place. AI can also be used for emotion detection. We have all stood in front of students in the past and been able to read their emotion. Read their emotion how? You explain something and that is something that we missed, I guess. All of us can say that we missed this in e-learning, because most of our students maybe do not open the cameras, so we cannot read their face. Some schools even asked students to go and open the camera so that the teacher can read their face. And if the teacher can read their face and can tell, for example, if what they have explained is clear to them, or if it needs help, then why can't AI replicate that behavior? It's a skill. Why not being able also to read? Imagine without opening their camera, you can tell, for example, if Ahmed or Amina are confused about something that you've just explained. That information given to you at the right time can lead you to explain something from a different angle. And in doing so, improve your teaching. That feedback is extremely valuable. And the way this works is, again, by giving data to AI. So we ask students, we create an experiment. We ask students, we give them content that is necessarily confusing. And we observe as their face shows signs of confusion. We give them content that we know makes you happy. We try to solicit that kind of reaction from them. And then we collect their faces when they are happy. And as we start to create these neutral, interested, excited, worried, confused, bored, all feelings that are important for a classroom, we give them to an AI, and we give AI the answers, because the student told us what the answer is. There was something that the students can use in order to reflect their feeling at the time. So when they were confused, we asked them, hey, if you are confused about this, click on confused. If you are happy about this, click on happy. If you are sad about this, click on sad. If you are excited, click on excited. So we got the answers. We got from them how their faces looked like, and also their feeling, their internal feeling, by them voluntarily giving us those feelings as part of the experiment. And then we give this to the AI. We told AI, this is the face of somebody who's excited. This is the face of somebody who's confused. This is the face of somebody who is bored in a class. And the benefit of that, especially in e-learning, I am able to get not only, imagine you being able to do that for a single student, then imagine that element of scale that we talked about, where, yes, you are excellent in reading students' faces, but can you look at all 30 of them in a classroom? This is where you start to wonder if AI can help scale your ability. It can, turn your eyes into, 30 pairs of eyes, and then allow you to focus on all of the students all at the same time. That will be something that augments your ability, does not in any way dampen it or replace it. In the same way, also, think about all of the situations where e-learning was there and it was important, but you did not like it because you could not see the students' faces. It's not that you missed the students' faces per se. It's what you missed truly is your ability to read whether the students understood or not, and to react to that. And imagine being able to get that in real time and collectively. Imagine not being able to just work on one student. Imagine if I can tell you 30% of the class found this confusing. By whispering this to your ear while you were explaining something online or in a classroom, 90% of your class liked this example. Just a hint that I give to you at the right time, which can tell you that next time this example is something that I need to reuse. And if you think that this is something that is not necessarily existing now, I urge you to look at this video that we have shown you here, and to see that actually China is starting to use this model inside classroom for early children, and they are meeting some success with it. In fact, we are meeting some success with it right here at Abu Dhabi University. Let me share with you a video of one of our graduate students whose work is exactly on emotion detection for students.
Hi, my name is Alaa Harb. I'm a master's student in electrical and computer engineering at Abu Dhabi University. I'm currently working on a research project about utilizing AI solutions in detecting students' emotions.
As you can see, we have made quite the success in analyzing a single student's behavior, and now we're trying to scale a single student's emotion, and now we're trying to scale that so that it can figure out the details that makes a confused students confused across a large number of students, and in doing so be able to give that valuable feedback, especially as far as e-learning is concerned. So that is something that AI can help us.
Hi.
AI can also help us allow students to access the lab and control equipment remotely using VR, virtual reality. So what does this entail? It entails, I have some equipment in the lab, and this is something that was born out of the need in COVID for the students to acquire practical skills in engineering programs while being away and unable to come to campus. And while, of course, there are softwares and tools and simulations, we've always thought that nothing replaces being able to work on real equipment. So the question is, can I bring the lab to the student? And how would I be able to do so? Well, that is not easy to do, but you can do it provided you can do two things. One is you are able to actually allow the students to be immersed in the lab environment. And for that, we have several cameras that capture all around view of the lab, 360 view of the lab, and stream that directly to the student's computer. And this is where AI comes in. It puts all of these 6 pictures into what is like a panorama or a VR format. And of course, now this comes to the students. The student basically wears a VR set, puts in the phone on the VR set, and then is able to use a controller in order to move a robot and start to make connections. And these controls, they come back as commands and move the connections around. So this is how the system works. And the benefit, it allows the students who, for whatever reasons, are unable to come to campus, but still want to acquire the practical skills necessary, they can start to use this. If there is a piece of equipment which is available in one place and not available in the other place, even with, forget the context of online education. If, for example, there is a certain school that possesses certain equipment that other schools do not, and they want to be able to access it remotely so that the students can benefit from that, then that is something that can be done. Now, let us just take a look at a video of also the system working so that you can get a better idea of this. And this was graduation projects for some of our students here at Abu Dhabi University.
Hello everyone, in this video we'll be demonstrating our VR controlled remote wiring robot for our capstone graduation project. For the first conducted experiment, we'll be validating Ohm's law by following the steps mentioned in the provided lab manual. Here, the user uses the remote controller to manually control the robotic arm and drive it to the desired pin locations. This is done through the help of the staged real-time WebRTC video stream and the picture-in-picture window that help provide a better look at the connections being made. Here we see the readings of the digital multimeter connected to the PCB. For the second lab experiment, the user is applying the superposition theorem through the remotely conducted lab experiment. The robotic arm is controlled manually and is able to pick and place wires.
I think, Doctor, just you need to raise the volume of it's already raised.
So here the students, let me speak as what's happening here. Students is picking up connections and making those connections in order to run the experiment on the real equipment itself, not on a visualization of it. The student also is actually doing so wearing a VR set. So this is what the student sees. Of course, it's very difficult to replicate the experience itself unless you are wearing a VR set. But if you are wearing a VR set, if you move your head around, you should be able to see different things as if you are in the lab. Wherever you look, it seems to you like you are in the lab. I know that you've all have experienced this somehow in other application of VR. So you should pretty much expect the same thing here. If a student is wearing this as a headset, then they are in the lab. They can see these connections that they make. And then by moving the controller, they can start to make connections and learn from those connections. So here a student, for example, is looking at this in VR and is making connections, observing what they are doing. And let me just show you if we can have a view of the students while they are wearing the VR set. I think here it is. So this is what the student is actually currently doing. He's using the controller in order to remotely control this AI-powered robotic arm and get at the same time streaming directly of VR content to their headset of the lab environment, so that they can, see what is it that they're doing and get the visual feedback necessary to make the experiment a success.
Hello, everyone.
Now, I understand we've gone through quite a number of cases so far. And if you have any questions, I would love to take those questions now before we continue. I have a good question here, which is there any research with AI and special needs? Absolutely. In fact, many of these systems that we discussed today definitely come to help students with special needs or students who are the people of determination. For example, being able to generate content for them, being able to allow them the ability to do, if they, for example, have some motility problems, they use the controller in order to acquire practical skills, not having, for example, being able to do that in the past. It can bring e-learning to them if, for example, for whatever reasons they are not integrated in the classroom because they have to be away, let's say they are at risk of COVID and so on. It can give their feedback, how are they feeling, to the teacher, so that the teacher can react to this feedback. So definitely there are many things that can be done for people of determination. When schools are going to use AI, I think this is something that you can begin to use it right away. Like I told you, there is the grade prediction, for example, the student performance assessments. There are many tools that are AI powered, which will come a little bit later, which you can start to introduce into your practice. So there is nothing stopping you from bringing AI directly into your students right away. Yes, I have a question from Dina also as to what are some of the mobile apps that can be used other than chatbots. I'll go over those towards the end. There are many apps that can be used that are AI powered and will benefit students. The analysis platforms that we have, there is one which is web-based. There are others also. The one that is web-based, the link is in the slides. It's an easy-to-use platform where you can upload your data and then do all sorts of AI analysis on the data. But you can also do that with Excel itself. So that is something that is possible to use. And there are many other platforms that can be used, which are ready and easy to use. What are cultural differences in facial recognitions of emotions? That's actually an excellent question. Absolutely, this is something that we as researchers in the regions are very much excited about and interested in. How can we ensure that whatever AI we produce is fair and is ethical and is not biased? In other words, when it looks at faces, for example, it understands our cultural needs. It looks at faces and not, for example, look for cues in aspects that we are typically not featuring and so on. So I'll give you an example. I remember when certain models of AI were brought in from the West into here, they were struggling with certain ways of dressing, certain ways, for example, of wearing the scarf. It was not prepared or trained on data that reflects this kind of input. And that's why researchers in the regions are correcting for this bias. So when we are looking at student data, for example, in some of the applications that will come later, we're trying to pick the students that we have the way they are and not be biased to a certain group of students, not to be biased to anything, pretty much. The way they wear, the way they look, their environment, and so on, in an effort to be culturally sensitive and inclusive in our AI model. Can AI lead into unemployment? I am not buying in to this particular argument that AI would necessarily come to eliminate jobs. AI will, what we call, displace jobs. In other words, it's going to refocus certain jobs or move people from certain area into other area where they are most used. So it requires a little bit of training for people. It requires a little bit of adapting to the new tools and new techniques, but it will just shift their interests and their skills from whatever was repetitive and time consuming without value to something which is more of value. So it will displace jobs, but it will not replace jobs. No, there are definitely things that you can start. I have a question here, which is about whether you can start alone or the administrator has to be involved in this. You can start right away. There are tools that are widely available. You can improve your own courses. You can improve your own teaching with those tools that are available. And hopefully you can become a champion and a leader in bringing those tools to everybody else and increasing their use. Does AI, I have a question, does AI requires always training? Not necessarily. Depends on what is it that you want to do. But the most prominent versions of AI, the ones that met the most success, benefit a lot from training. Now, the degree of training varies depending on the complexity of the task that you want to have. The more complex the task, the more the training data that you would need. But there is AI, which is based not necessarily on data. It's based on what we call behaviorism. And I'm sure you're familiar with it. So I don't have data. I just have an agent, and that agent interacts with the environment. And when it does something good, I give it a positive reinforcement. And when it does something not so good towards achieving the target, I give it a negative reinforcement. And it learns simply by my cues. So here, I'm not giving the students a list of problems. I'm just observing them as they solve problems. And I just tell them correct or wrong. And that's all what I provide. I don't provide data. I just provide feedback. So if I have the ability to provide feedback, but without actually having data to work with, then in this case, that is a certain class of learning called reinforcement learning. Reinforcement because I reinforce good behaviors and I don't want to say bad behaviors, but ones that are not contributing to the target. I have an excellent questions about data protection while experimenting with AI. Absolutely. Whenever there are humans involved, whenever we take pictures, whenever we take videos for data collections, we go through a process for ethical approvals before we are able to do so. And of course, we have the need also to communicate how the data will be used and how AI will benefit from this data and how the data will be protected and so on before we engage in any sort of experimentation. So there is an entire process, a lengthy and user-centered process for acquiring the data in the right way and using it without breaking any privacy or running into any concerns as far as users are. Yes, I have an excellent question from Fatima here. What is after analysis? Okay. So after analysis, there are tools in AI that will come, for example, based on that analysis, I can generate. So after analysis comes synthesis, Fatma. And what happens here is that in the same way that I created AI that is there to analyze the situation and give me insights, I can create AI that will take the input and then produce out of the input something. Like, for example, I make AI play music, or I make AI generate an essay for me, or I make AI paraphrase for me or summarize. These examples come later. In this case, AI generates something out of nothing. So the next step after analysis would be, for example, maybe to create e-learning content specifically designed for that particular students to fix a problem that the analysis detected. So analysis says they are weak in math in these areas, and synthesis says, here are a few examples that can help enforce those. I have a question also here about, especially in education, can the teacher be dispensed with if artificial intelligence solves data analysis, assessment, output prediction? No, but it will change what an AI does, Ms. Alia. What will happen here is that, the closer you are to a human connection, the safer you are as far as AI is concerned from automation. In fact, when people are thinking about what will happen to all of those who are currently, going to be replaced by AI, one of the most common themes is that these people will now move to take care of the elderly and take care of children. And taking care of the elderly and the children, it means what? It means education and, of course, healthcare and care. So what will happen is that the teacher will no longer serve as somebody who is just an authority on content. Content is available, but a teacher will start to play the roles of a facilitator, somebody who is a motivator, somebody who's a mentor, encouraging students. I mean, if there is something that we have learned from all of the 2 years of COVID education, is that the human connection, especially in a classroom, and the human connection with the teacher is something which is irreplaceable. And it's something which is crucial to learning. So this is about giving you superpowers as a teacher, as opposed to trying to replace with an AI that can assess, or an AI can generate lessons or anything of that sort. This is about empowering you and not about replacing you. And in fact, I think probably education is one of the safest area as far as AI automation is concerned, because of the human connection in it. Can AI identify graduate appetite? Absolutely. That is something that can be detected from their interests, from their exams, from their writing. So yes, if I have this data, if a human being, if I can bring this data to, let's say, somebody who's an expert in career advice, and they look at the data and they run their mojo and they come to produce appetites or aptitudes, then in this case, I can make AI replicate this, providing that I have the same data. So that's definitely an interesting use of AI, and I think that it's probably there somewhere. Now, in terms of how you can use AI, the slides are filled with examples and tools. So maybe you can start with those, and that can give you an idea. In every one of these topics that I've discussed, I either refer to a paper or refer to a tool which is available, which you can use towards that goal. Can it be used for performance evaluations? Absolutely. I think it is used for performance evaluation. It will continue to be used for performance evaluation, and also it has the potential for use in outcome assessment. I know you all have outcomes, learning outcomes, and you want to know whether you have reached that learning outcome or not. And in many cases, the things that we use in order to assess are sometimes riddled with problems and noise and these kind of things. So AI can do a better job sifting through the noise and giving you the accurate level at which an outcome is met. And we've demonstrated grades as one of the techniques, but there are many others. How can teachers get involved in AI research? I think one of the things that teachers have, which is valuable to AI researchers, is data. So if they are involved in an experiment, for example, they can be either contributing as getting good data for AI to train on, or invalidating the AI's conclusions and methodology. So AI, the teachers are the testers of AI, and also they are the source of behavior that we are trying to mimic, and the source of data that we need in order to succeed. I think that the teachers being replaced in e-learning has nothing to do with AI itself. It probably is an issue with scale and e-learning, more so than it is about AI in general. So that is something that is, I think it's a different topic and maybe a discussion for another day. All right. So now let's continue exploring other applications of how AI can be used together, and then come back to questions later on if we have time. So I want to show you another example of how AI is used, which is to interact with objects. So if I have an object, a 3D object, and I want students to interact with it, maybe, for example, the human body, and I want the students to be able to dig deep into the human body and be able to see the insides and how these insides work. So here, what we do is we have this system which we developed, which looks at, for example, medical scans of the brain, scans of the heart, scans of the lung, and so on, and then would slice them and dice them using AI, and then would use a tablet and the tablet's ability to be tracked around. So, for example, if I move my phone, there are sensors that can tell me how I move my phone. And then to match the hand movements with the actual part of the data that we are showing. So in doing so, we're able to create a system where students can explore a 3D objects inside and can dig into how these insides make the object tick and work using these tablet devices. So let's show this to you. For example, here we have students who are studying biomedical engineering, and they are looking at a certain tumor in the brain, or they could be studying medicine. And by moving this tablet, they are able to explore the tumor from all angles to understand how they affect the brain and what actions probably a doctor would need to do in order to treat that tumor. So let me show you a video of this system working. So here we have the scan, the medical scan, which can be, it doesn't have to be a medical scan. It can be any object that I want students to explore. For example, any, we use it for anatomy, but it could be applied to any object. And then the students will start to move around. And as she does, she's able to look at the inside and slice the object from any angle. Some of these angles are from top to bottom, some of them are from side to side. So this is a new view that allows you to look at various layers of a particular object to try to explore it. This is done through AI, and it can serve as a tool that can help me allow students to go and to explore objects. But exploring objects is one thing. I can actually have the students interactively using AI explore locations. And this is another project that we are working on, whereby we have a robot and we have a camera which captures 360, and the robot moves this tripod which has the camera on it, and we start to associate the location with what you see. And the end result of that is we are able to generate a VR content of a certain space. So here is the robot moving. You can see the robot moving here, and it captures VR as it explores, for example, certain areas of our campus. And after we finish the complete exploration, then we can replay that exploration, allowing the students to use the controller and start to navigate any environment. We can start to make them navigate, for example, space, or to navigate jungle, or to navigate desert. And by navigation, it means they are free to roam around in the entire area, look at objects and interact with these objects and get more information about them. So this is definitely another application of AI that we have been able to get. So students will now start to move, and as they move around in the room, they are able to see different things, and they're able to go from one place to another place, have a look around wherever they want, and then see all of the aspects of the place that they are visiting. AI can also be used to enforce health and safety guidelines. So here, what we have is we have created an AI in our lab, which looks at faces and is able to tell if a student has their mask on properly, if a student has their mask on, but maybe not in a good way, or if they don't have their mask on. And that robot is AI driven and learns to map the environment completely, pretty much like one of these robot vacuum cleaners, using the same kind of technology to map the environment, go around, and then have a computer vision technique and an AI technique in order to look at faces and be able to tell whether people are wearing their mask or not. So for example, this is an example of somebody who's correctly wearing their mask, somebody who's incorrectly wearing their mask, and somebody who's not. And this is a kind of a small demo of how the system works. So here it just tells the user رجاء لبس القناع جيدا, or please wear a mask, to give them the kind of feedback to ensure that everybody is maintaining. So this is a repetitive task. Someone that at school is probably doing that, and this robot can help them be in more places than one, and can give them an accurate report of how good people are wearing masks, or where are people who are not wearing masks located, so they can go and advise them. We also have created a robot which works as a teaching assistant. This robot, again, using technologies to navigate a classroom, let's say in the middle of an exam, and if somebody is cheating, it will identify them. And if a student has a question, they can ask this question and they can get an answer about the questions in the exam using this kind of robot. So this is a number of AIs in the process. One of them is there so that the AI can autonomously move around in the classroom without hitting any obstacles. In another AI, it uses a content recommendation system so that it can recommend answers to the questions that the students have during the exam. Also, when the students come to submit their papers at the very end, they can go to the robot and just flip through their papers in their test, and the robot will capture all of their answers and will then send them to the doctor organized, or to the teacher organized in a folder with the student's ID. And of course, while it's moving around, it will use its camera to try to detect certain cheating behaviors. Let's explore these together. So of course, such a proctor, we all have been involved in proctoring. Having an AI to proctor for us is definitely an additional measure that we can use to protect classrooms. Of course, it has the added advantage that you don't come near students. So if there are guidelines not to violate the 2-meter guideline or the 1-meter guideline or directions, that robot can definitely help achieve this. And this is a recent research which has been accepted in education. The reference to it is here. Now, let's begin with autonomous navigation. Autonomous navigation uses sensors in order to map an environment and allow the robot the ability to go around in a classroom, similar to how a vacuum cleaner does this, and to be able to get a complete map of the environment. And of course, there are sensors to protect. So if you stand in front of the robot, it will detect this and it will go around you so that it doesn't hit you if, for example, a student stood up and so on. So this is always there. So let's see this. Let's see a demo of this.
Hey Richard, start the exam.
Heading proctoring session. All students are instructed to take their places.
Hey Richard, start the exam.
Also, AI can be used in order to do personalized content authoring. If I have a student, for example, who I know things about, I know they need this help, I know they like this particular aspect, I can make the students ask, what do they want information on, what do they want help on, and then generate a lesson for them. Here, what is happening is we are reading what the students, we are identifying the students from their face. So that allows us to know who this student is and what their background is. We then, get their question and use this in our recommendation engine to produce the actual material that will be presented to the students. So this is a form of adaptive learning or differentiated learning, where it really depends on what the students' aptitude is for, let's say, a particular type of learner. Is it a visual learner? Is it somebody who learns by listening or doing and so on? And then I rely on recommendation systems in order to bring up good content for them. So here is an example of that.
Hey Richard, could you tell me a joke?
So an electrical engineer built a house entirely out of resistors. The welcome mat said "Om Sweet Om."
Hey Richard, could you give me an example of Fourier transform?
Alright, so should I go ahead and fetch the example for you for the Fourier transform topic?
Yes.
Done. Is this what you were looking for?
And in engaging in a dialogue, a follow-up questions can also come to benefit what bit of content will be brought into the students. So depending on how they engage in that dialogue, the system will start to present them with more and more examples than that. I need more example. I did not understand this. So maybe then it will pull up a step-by-step explanation. So that kind of content that is generated to the liking of the user creates that kind of adaptive learning situation utilizing this kind of technology. Also, as we said, the same robot has the ability to allow students to scan papers quickly and leave. So you don't need to ask students to bring their laptops or to take them to the computer lab so that they can run an exam. And you don't need to exchange papers with the students. They can bring papers from at home and then take the exam and then submit the exams digitally using the technique that we just told you about. As in, the student stands in front of the robot, starts to flip the pages. And as they flip the pages, eventually you get, as a teacher, a PDF with the student's ID and their work delivered right to your email or to your box. And the benefit of that is that I can put 4 cameras on the robot and be able to get 4 students to submit quickly without exchanging any papers in an environment, for example, where the exchange of papers can be something which is not advised as far as pandemics go. So let's see a video of this. So here, AI recognizes the students from the QR code, recognizes the page number, and recognizes the questions answers. And like a scan application, similar to the one that you are familiar with, for example, like Cam Scanner or any other scanners, it makes this page better, makes it more black and white, improves it, cuts it, and puts all of these papers together into a single PDF file, which eventually comes to you as the final answer for the students without the students having exchanged any papers with you. So from here to that paper for the students, and you can then get engaged in grading without having to worry about how the submission is. So you go to a folder and you find the exam papers for every student, scanned by the robot quickly and put together into a single file. So this is another example of how AI is used. And we said also the robot has on board some ability to detect cheating behavior. So the way we do it is we again collect data. We ask students to participate with us in this experiment. So we ask them, for example, to hold a mobile phone while doing an online exam. We ask them to hold the book while doing an online exam. We ask them to get somebody to help them by speaking to them, by sharing a paper to them, and so on. And we record what happened. And then we feed that to an AI. And then the AI is able to detect if such cheating has taken place by looking at it. Of course, cheating is a complex behavior and it's not easy to detect, but at least, the obvious cheating is something that can be easily detected by that. Somebody with a phone will be promptly detected. Somebody who's, working on a piece of paper that is like a cheat sheet or something can be easily detected. Somebody who's looking around can be easily detected. Somebody who's gazing away and looking at somebody else, and so on. But of course, there are certain aspects that cannot be cheated. So here you deter from cheating, you make it harder to cheat, and so on. But of course, you cannot detect every aspect of cheating. And again, here we'll see a demo of how this system works. So here, for example, we have at the top what the system or what the AI is seeing. And here the student is taking an online exam, and the AI is detecting what it does and displaying it here on the side. So he detected left arm movement. Here he detected right hand making a phone call. It also knows a human being. It also somebody is reading from a paper. So it flags somebody's texting. It flags these kind of things. And then you can look at them to determine what really has taken place in these particular situations. And of course, this example was brought in by you, and it's not complete until we bring this example, chatbots for classroom management. You can now get many questions related to how you manage your class. When is the midterm? How do I submit this? How can I find the latest assignment? All of this information, questions that you've answered many, many times in the past, and feed them into a chatbot. And then the chatbot will take over answering these questions for you. And it will start to even follow up in the dialogue and give timely and accurate information as far as class management is concerned. Even as far as content is concerned, it can still do that in a good way. And these are some of the tools that you can use to make that happen. And what you get out of this is you get a 24/7 answer to student questions as far as class management. Why I say class management is because there aren't many questions in class management about when is the midterm, or how to study this, or when is the assignment due, or can we delay this, or what is included in the exam. These are not many questions, but they get asked quite frequently. So they are really good candidates for automating, so that you can get those answers quickly and do something with them. Also, AI can be used for writing assessment and feedback. I don't know if you've heard of Grammarly, but Grammarly is doing exactly that. It looks at many aspects of, and this is a tool available. You can go ahead and use it today, and it does really improve somebody's language. So it comes highly recommended. What it does is it looks at grammar, it looks at punctuation, and it looks at many aspects, like clarity, for example, like conciseness, like language use, formal, not formal. So it uses AI to analyze all of these things, and it comes up with amazing suggestions on how to create a better writing. And in time, as you encourage your students to use this tool, their writing improves. In fact, this tool allows you also to get a report score of all aspects of the English use in the report, as well as detailed line by line improvements that the students make. So if you have this tool, it can do a lot of wonders as far as grading writing for you, not only just to grade, but also to give the students amazing feedback, which is quite detailed. So we use this tool a lot, and it comes highly recommended. And if you have not heard of Grammarly, this video can help introduce it for you. There are, of course, also AI tool. This tool is excellent in summarizing and excellent in paraphrasing. So you can put any text that you want, and it can summarize it or paraphrase it for you using AI. Now, this can be an excellent feedback tool to teach students how to do these very important skills. When they get something from the internet, for example, you tell them, no, you have to use in-text citations, end of report citations, and you have to paraphrase. How do I paraphrase? This can help them know how to paraphrase, give them idea of how to paraphrase. So at least they can pick up these skills. They can, compare how the tool did the paraphrasing and maybe learn from it. Not to use the tool exclusively and, remove the need to learn paraphrasing, but rather to use the tool as feedback in order to improve that skill. The same thing for summarization. If they need to summarize something, then this tool can do an excellent job summarizing the main points, and that can help them understand many tools. They can now pick up examples from the internet, put them there, and see how the summary is made. So instead of giving them many examples, or one example or two examples, you can really give them this tool and an excellent number of potential examples that they can analyze and pick up the skills from this. And this video will teach you this tool and how this tool, we're pressed in time, so we'll just move on. Video synthesis using AI is also an amazing feature. I know sometimes we need to develop e-learning software, but we don't want to appear on camera. We want maybe to have the face. The research says that having the face in the video is important. Having the eye contact is important. But what if you can type the text and get an excellent quality video synthesized for you of somebody speaking this text? This tool is available, is online. You can start to use this tool right away. Let me just show you how it looks like eventually.
Welcome to Synthesia Studio. It's the first platform that allows you to create videos by simply typing in text. In this video, I'll give you a quick tour of the platform. On the Videos panel, you can see all the videos you have created. Click a video to open up the Videos page where you can share, download, duplicate, and delete your video. Click the Create New Video to create your first video. Type the video title, write your script, and click the Listen button to listen to the preview.
Hi, I'm Vincent, and I will be your presenter today.
Or you can upload your own audio. On the right side, select an actor, choose your framing, and adjust actor sizing. Add a soundtrack and choose a background or upload your custom background.
As you can see, this tool can really help you create a lot of engaging videos that really speak your audio or speak your text. In fact, the audio synthesis using your own voice tool allows you to also record your voice and have the text that you write spoken again with your voice. I know some of you have maybe faced this when they are creating content and they are frustrated by having to record again and again and maybe not getting it right or getting and then having to do video editing here or there and not being happy about the final product. This really eliminates the need for that. So what you do is you record your audio, it learns your audio, and from that point forward, if you type in text, it can speak it with an audio that resembles yours to a great degree. Of course, it depends on how well you draw it, and this is how well you train it, and this is really AI-driven tool.
In this video, I am going to show you the basics of using Overdub. The way that Overdub works is that you attach an Overdub voice to a speaker label. The first time you click into create a speaker label, we'll go ahead and suggest some that are based on your Overdub voices. In this video,
now we really are at the end of our presentation, so I would like to ask you to use this URL or to scan this QR code, which will take you into a form where you can fill your recommendations, please. This is something that has been asked of me to do, and I kindly would like for you to come back to that link and to scan that QR code and help us do better by looking at or by giving us recommendations for next time. Before I conclude, I would like to stop at certain key points that we have discussed. How AI can bring in a lot of value to education, in teaching, in learning, in classroom management, in health and safety, in assessment, in feedback, in education and technology, and more. And many tools are readily available for you to use right away. And research is only bringing us more innovations and more performance and improvements over these tools, which are promising and will definitely come to empower us to a great degree. However, something that you probably have learned is that community participation in AI does really accelerate innovation in the form of access to data. We need you. We need you to identify problems that we can use AI for. We need you to validate our AI and test it. We need you to participate in AI experiments and engage us with data. All of these are things you can contribute toward improving AI in education. And this is really what matters. In an experiment by the team that has given us Google Translate, they found out that quality data has contributed significantly to the final quality of Google Translate more than the volume of the data. So it was really about giving them good data, good insight. That's how they've been able to produce this amazing tool that we all have come to know and love. And if you have any questions or any comments, then this is my email and my phone number and WhatsApp, and I would love to be able to take your questions. I think we probably have time for a few questions. Let me take a look and we can take it from there. I have questions on what is the impact of artificial intelligence on mental health if you're working in a place where being continuously monitored. Many of these things are opt-in, Ms. Alia. So you typically don't deploy them until there is a need for you to deploy them. And there is an agreement for you to deploy them. And all parties involved are privy of the importance and the benefits that this brings. And of course, awareness is key. Because, for example, if you're looking at this as I'm being monitored all the time, and that is something that I don't want to do, you can also look at it as, well, I'm not being monitored for anything else except to check whether cheating has taken place or not. Or I'm being monitored so that the teacher would know how I feel about what they are teaching and how you're being monitored. No one is looking at that. AI is crunching numbers and looking at features in your face to just come to say you are happy or not. So if you are made aware of what AI is and how it works and how the data is used, and if within this information you feel comfortable to opt in to that kind of service, then that kind of service will bring you benefits. But of course, all such services are things you can opt out if you do have those concerns, which will often come from a bit, I don't want to say ignorance, but from something new. You're not aware of how it works, you are worried how it's used and so on, and you are within your right to think about it this way. But of course, if done right, and there are regulatory concerns and there are laws that are put so that you can produce ethical AI, and part of ethical AI involves answering questions related to user protection and privacy and so on. So in fact, in the UAE is probably ahead of everybody else in terms of having a clear thought as far as the importance of ethical AI and the importance of doing it the right way, and at the same time an understanding of its potential and its importance and the kind of impact that it can make. So there is a balance of things, but you are right in considering these things. And I think if they are done right, they can bring in services to those who like those services to help them better. Can you use robots on ceilings rather than floor? Yes, you can, but it becomes a little bit harder because you will have now to account for certain aspects that you need to install on the ceiling itself in order to keep the robot the freedom to move around without falling or without running. But yeah, definitely that could be done. Yes, I agree. I have here a comment from Ms. Maha, and she says that it could really assist in differentiation. Yes, differentiation is tricky because differentiation requires us not to divide our attention, but to look at one particular student or two or maybe three. It depends on your skill and your experience, how many you can manage. But if I can it be 30? Can it be 40? If the AI can give me insights and data, AI will crunch in the numbers and will tell you, it will not take decisions for you, but it will present the information for you in a manner that allows you to act on this information in a really better way than you did in the past. So it will tell you, for example, that this particular student is not participating well. Maybe you should do something about them. And that student, according to their performance, they are heading towards a failing grade. Maybe you should do something about those. And here are some examples that fit where they are struggling. So AI can empower you to make those decisions, can give you the insights that will allow you to be a better teacher. But of course, and that will of course put the differentiation drive on hyperdrive, because that is exactly what is missing to make differentiation more effective than what it is right now, scaling it. What if handwriting of the students is not proper? Then in this case, it's just about improving the AI, allowing to see more data where the students' handwriting varies and so on. And like I said, it will perform, not necessarily 100%. It will perform depending on how good is that AI, maybe at 90, 95% and so on. But that saving you do with 95% performance or 90 performance is quite impactful. So it's still worth it, even if it doesn't do a perfect job all the time. Yes, I spoke about ethical policies for AI. There are guidelines that are, I think, coming up about the ethical use of AI. I've attended certain conferences where this was also discussed as the highest level as far as leadership is concerned. There's definitely work that is being done in setting out the regulatory framework for ethical AI. So especially in the UAE. So that is put in place, and I think those who are working in AI are concerned with this. And I think one thing I want to mention about ethical AI is that it's really a global problem. It's not a question that is we're the only ones struggling with it. Defining the ethical boundary of AIs, there are companies that are created and bought just for their value in terms of advancing ethical AI and how we can do this better. How are we doing time-wise?
We still have around 5 minutes, Doctor, before our time is up.
We still have questions to take. Oh, yes. Okay, I will do that right now. Please let me know if you have any problems accessing the link. Let me just make it public. 1 second. Remember, the link is basically tiny URL, 3 recommendations. So this is the link, is easy to remember. Maybe we can put it in the chat. Can you help me put it in the chat, please?
And Dr. Muhammad, also there is a few attendees, they are raising their hand. If we can just give them a chance.
Absolutely. Please go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. So there is Miss Fatima Omar. Miss Fatima, just unmute yourself and talk.
Okay, now the form should be accessible. So those who, can you please confirm this, if the form is accessible to you? I just posted the link to the form also.
It seems Miss Fatima, she's having an issue. So I will ask Dr. There is SD. SD, you are allowed to talk. Just unmute yourself. It seems it's the same issue. Let me try with Dr. Midhat Sulaiman. Dr. Midhat, you are allowed to sign. Just you need to unmute yourself from the mic and speak.
I already have 2 responses, which means that probably the link is accessible now. Can you please check it now? Thanks.
Yes, Doctor, the link is accessible for the forms. And Dr. Midhat was unmuted, but we were not able to hear his voice, unfortunately.
He need to unmute himself from his computer. This is the problem. And we give him the chance, but unfortunately. So we'll try with Mr. Sharif, if also will allow him to talk. Mr. Sharif, you can unmute your, if you want to talk, you can just unmute your mic and please go ahead. It seemed the same. So I think it's fine. Maybe they are having an issue with their mics, Lael.
Can we please put the link on the chat? I sent it a couple of times, but I think it has to be released from your end, Dr. Muhammad, as a host. Here, I just sent the link to everyone. Please use it and see if this will give you access. For the pre-primary level, I think I have a question here as to some tools which can be used for pre-primary level. There are some tools where some mobile applications, for example, that you can point to a particular objects and it can say its name. There are also ones where you can do a treasure hunt by pointing your phone to a set of particular objects. So, for example, you can identify certain objects, and then kids can go and they have to point their camera to these objects. So these kind of object detection and recognition systems can definitely be tailored for a pre-primary level students, especially as they explore the environment and they're learning vocabulary and they're learning about objects and what these objects are. So that definitely can be used there. to recognize students' faces. This goes into something called facial recognition, and it depends on whether you have already the faces stored somewhere in a database through, let's say, a data set of pictures of students. If that is the case, then yes, you can train a facial recognition system. For students' voice, you will need to collect, of course, samples of these students' voices. And from them, you can then do speaker identification. So that probably, I have not yet come across a tool which is publicly available for you to use that can be used in order to do that. But I urge you to look at Teams, because I think Teams allows you to transcribe a certain meeting. And if you transcribe certain meetings, then it should identify when people are speaking and who are they. And that achieves the same purpose. Now, of course, it does use their mic in order to find out their identity, but it gives you speech to text. And then you can analyze that text and identify the students who participated. So while this used to be a research which is exclusive in the past to people who are working on it, now these tools are available and they do an excellent job. Thank you to all who submitted the form. I really appreciate it. If you want to take courses in AI and medicine, there is a certificate at the University of Louisville, which is dedicated for AI in medicine. And it's an excellent certificate for that matter. So I urge you to look into that. Just search for University of Louisville, AI in medicine. We also offer a lot of courses at the university, at Abu Dhabi University, which are in AI in medicine and in many aspects in relation to AI, in autonomous systems and AI for engineers, AI for everyone. All of these courses are available at Abu Dhabi University. And we're even having an upcoming course, which is AI in education. I know that, and I apologize for having to deliver at that pace, which is a little bit fast. It was just a lot of ground to cover. And but each and every one of these topics can be explored in details and can be part of a course. And we are working on an AI in education course, which is, I think, something for those interested to explore this further. AI can help in special education. One project which I did not mention, Ms. Lydia, is there is a robot called Now Robot, and that robot is very humanoid and nice. And we use that robot to interact with students who have certain diseases that are part of the autism spectrum. So what we do is we recognize the emotion of people, we recognize their behavior, and then we make the robot take certain actions in order to solicit the response that we want. So at the same way, if, for example, the robot is acting sad, whether the child is able to recognize the emotion and react to it. So there is work also that is done there in using robotics with those who are suffering from autism. Dr. Iftiha, there is a question here, whether they need to open the camera for the test or not.
No, they don't need. Like Dr. Hamdi Shiban is not with here now, so it's fine. Without the lockdown browser and without camera. And Layal, she will explain also part of those things related to the assignments at the end, inshallah.
I think we are at the end of the presentation. So thank you everyone who has attended. And if you have any more questions, then please feel free to contact me. And thank you, Dr. Mohammed Iftiha and team for creating this opportunity. I appreciate your time and effort, and hopefully you have benefited a lot from this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Rozal. It's really a great presentation, informative, and I'm sure all of the attendees enjoyed it like myself. So thanks a lot for that.
You're almost welcome.
Thank you again, Professor, for such a mind-blowing presentation, actually. I'm pretty sure everybody enjoyed this. Just let me draw your attention to the fact that Dr. Fdeha has already shared in the chat box the link to the reflection survey. So it would be highly appreciated if you can click on the link and provide your reflection, your feedback in order to improve the conferences and the workshops for later on. And about the final reflection, there has been a lot of questions about it. It will only be, it will be released today, and the deadline to submit the final reflection is on November 4, as previously mentioned, by 11:59 p.m. Abu Dhabi UAE timing. So once you submit the final reflection, you will get a certificate of completion. And if you do not submit the final reflection, you will get a certificate of attendance. In all cases, you have to register on the Abu Dhabi community portal, ADU community portal, sorry. So thank you again, all of you, for the time invested in this. And see you all in ADU's 5th Professional Development Certificate in December 2021, Education for All, Inclusive and Special Education Perspective Professional Development Certificate. Thank you again. Thank you, Dr. Fdeha, for the opportunity. And have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Leah. It was really great to have you with us as an MC. Thank you for that.
Thank you.